So speak life, when the sun won't shine and you don't know why. Look into the eyes of the broken hearted, watch them come alive as soon as you speak hope, you speak love, you speak life.
Hi and welcome to Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith, and I'm honored that you're here. This show today brought to you by Malone Dentistry. And in dealing with life, that's an attitude that sometimes we take way too literally. Sometimes we take life as something we have to deal with. And we deal with it struggle by struggle. And that's not what I believe God intended. I believe that our struggles actually can be transformed into opportunities if we allow them. If we dread the struggles that are to come, then we're going to hate them. But if we invite them to be opportunities for us to learn, for us to grow, for us to find out a little more about who Jesus is and a little more about who we are, then those struggles can be something that we can anticipate and actually let them work in our favor. This is a show we do every single week at this time, and we have guests on who have been through struggles and found a deepened faith in the process. And we also have people who have been called to help. Today, I'm so excited for you to meet a man named Russ Owens. Nice to have you today. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Russ is, you're part of a ministry that is very powerful and very needed these days. It's called True Purpose Ministries.
Yes.
And you guys, you help people who are struggling, whether it be drug addiction, whether it be life challenges, ending up in hopeless situations. There's all kinds of things you guys help people with. There's got to be a story in that, why you do that, and that's what I'm so excited to talk about and dive into your passion of dealing with that, and also why you're there. So let's talk about Russ Owens. You're from South Carolina.
I am.
Born and raised.
Born and raised.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell from your accent.
Yeah.
I love South Carolina accent.
A lot of people ask me if I'm from Louisiana. That's the first thing they get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a relation there. I can tell. But talk about life in South Carolina. You were involved in church, right?
I was from a very young age. I tell people all the time, even at a young age, I had a drug problem. Every time the doors was open, I was either willingly going or drugged to church, and so
you were drugged to church. Yeah. I love that.
And so it from that age, always that I can remember, just going to church, and every time the doors were open, and as that continued on through my childhood and even into my teenage years, pretty active and involved in the church doors.
Okay. So, but something happened that changed everything for you.
Yep, something happened. I always kind of like to give a little joke, and I ask them where did we kind of go wrong in life, and I always make the joke of when I got my driver's license.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, when you first taste freedom,
yes,
you're alone and you can go wherever you want, kind of.
That's right.
So what happened?
And so as I continued on just living life from that point, me and my father started building a pretty good relationship.
Okay.
And I took up bowling and started bowling because he really just enjoyed it. And so for us to kind of get more active and me kind of to build that relationship with a father, I really wanted to excel in it because I saw him being proud of his son.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's important.
Yeah, very important.
You really do want to make him proud.
Yeah, and as that relationship continued to grow, when I turned about 19 years old, I woke up one morning and my mom was screaming and crying, and in that moment she said, "They found him, and he's dead." Oh no! My dad had went out of town on a business trip, and a guy robbed him. Shot him twice between the eyes and buried him. We couldn't find him for 17 days.
Oh my gosh! That's so. It's not anybody he knew. It was just a robbery.
Yes,
random robbery. Now, what does that do in your head?
Well, at that moment, I look back and at that time, I wish I'd have never woke up from that sleep. And but today, I'm so thankful that I'm able to sit here and tell my story. because of what I have been through. Hopefully, through that, it will bring hope and destiny back in someone else's life.
Yeah, I mean that's something you don't plan for, something you definitely don't want happening, but that's something that sometimes that does happen, and you got to deal with. So you're how old at this time?
I'm 19 years old.
Okay, and you're still in South Carolina. So what happens in your head?
From that point on, I wake up and I'm instantly thinking I have to be the man of the house.
Okay.
I had to start carrying my mom and my sister,
Okay.
and which are both, my sister's older as well, but I still have that. I have to be the man of the house mentality.
Sure.
And so I raise up real quickly, and
Yeah,
through that I'm
you
angry.
become a man real fast.
Yes,
Ouch.
and so through that I'm pretty angry. Have a lot of resentment, a lot of bitterness, and I go back to an eye for an eye thinking.
Oh yeah, because anger develops and probably hate develops in there. And this is toward the man who did this to your dad.
Yes. And so in that anger and resentment, bitterness, and all that was inside of me, I turned to drugs and alcohol, and just really a life on the streets, trying to sell drugs to help pay bills.
Wow.
Trying to use drugs to kill the pain.
Yeah, to numb the pain and the anger.
Yes.
So, a stupid question, but did it work?
Oh no.
I know it didn't, but I wanted to hear you say that.
Yeah, we think it does at the time.
Yeah.
Yep. And so that took me down an 11-year road of addiction. And people ask me all the time, what drug did I use? And I tell them I was what you call a trash can junkie.
What does that mean?
Well, a trash can, it'll hold whatever you put in it.
Yeah.
And so it didn't matter to me, because the only thing I was trying to do was outrun or cover up the pain that I was feeling.
Wow.
And through that, I went through different programs. I went to trying to get different help, and nothing seemed to work.
Yeah. Once you open the door, that's a hard door to shut.
It really is. It was almost impossible until I met Jesus.
Well, that's and that's something I want to talk about today. Is you knew who Jesus was. You went to church, but you didn't know Jesus.
Right. I tell people all the time, if church was the answer, I would have never went through the addiction. But church is not the answer, but it'll lead you to the answer, which is Jesus.
It's the place to find it.
Yes.
But you got to search and you got to dig.
That's right.
Okay, so tell us, you're still in South Carolina at this point. Now you live in Knoxville, so kind of complete that path.
Okay. Back in 2005, I was one of the darkest years of my life that I can remember. And in that time, I was just really just almost didn't even want to live. Tried to commit suicide, trying to overdose, and it seems like I couldn't. I remember the first time that the Lord showed up in my addiction. People say all the time, well, you need to clean up, you need to get some things out of your life before He'll come. And I didn't find that to be true in my story or my testimony.
Sure, but that's very common.
It is.
You don't feel worthy to even walk into a church.
That's right.
Or even to look up and say, Jesus, help me, because you don't think you can and you don't think you deserve it.
Yeah, and I was actually, one night, I had been on a binge, hadn't eaten for days, and I was in my room at my mother's house, and I was cramping real bad, chest pounding, real nauseated, my body was cramping, drawing in, and all of a sudden, I got really afraid, and it's like a spirit of death almost walked into the room.
Yikes.
And something said to me, if you do any more, you're going to die. And instantly in that moment, I said, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. There truly is a God.
So you felt like there was a true warning.
Yes. And so in that moment, at that time, I had no idea why I cried out that.
Yeah.
But the Bible is very clear when it starts talking about how the Holy Spirit makes intercession for us, even when we know not what to pray.
Okay.
And so in that moment, from me being raised in church, and having some type of relationship with Jesus, I believe the Holy Spirit started interceding for me in that moment.
Wow.
And as that happened, I said, Lord, I said, if you're trying to tell me something I need to know, I said, have my mom wake up and come in here and say I'm on her mind and catch me. And so I waited a little while.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. my mind started messing with me. Started saying, "Oh, you're just high. You're crazy."
Yeah. You're just nuts.
Yeah. And so I said, "No." I said, "Lord, if you're trying to tell me something, I need to know." I said, "Have my sister come home and say I'm on her mind and catch me." And I waited a little while. Nothing happened. And I really started thinking I was just crazy.
Okay.
And so I said, "Lord," I said, "this is it. If you're trying to tell me something, I need to know." I said, "If you don't do anything," I said, "I'm going to get high, and if I die, I just die." I said, "Have my Aunt Lou come over to the house and catch me and say I'm on her mind." Waited a little while, nothing happened. And so I started to get high and started to continue my process. And when
So
I
you
did,
gave in.
I was giving in.
Yeah.
And so before I actually took of what I was doing at the time, I heard a noise, got my attention.
Okay.
And I actually heard my mom get up. I heard her start walking. I heard her go into her bathroom because it was right behind my wall.
Okay.
And so I started putting up everything. And as I started putting everything up, she came in. She opened up my door. And she said, "Baby, what's wrong?" She said, "You can't sleep?" I said, "No, ma'am, I can't sleep." She said, "Well," she said, "did you hear the phone ring?" I said, "No, ma'am, I didn't hear the phone ring." She said, "Well, the strangest thing just happened." She said, "My cell phone started ringing."
Oh, no. I can see where this is going.
Yep. And she said, "I went and got my cell phone." And she said, "It was your sister calling me." She said, "I answered the phone, and she wasn't on the phone. Matter of fact, it started ringing, and it woke your sister up." She said, and me and her talked for a few minutes. She said, and we both decided that neither one of us called each other, but the phone rang and woke us both up. And she said, she said, "I don't know why." She said, "But I felt like I had to come in here and tell you that."
My goodness.
And she said, "Why don't you turn your TV off and maybe you can go to sleep?" And she closed the door. When she closed the door, I heard God speak to me. And he said, "If you don't know I'm real now, you'll never know."
Wow.
And I got up. I took all my drugs and everything I had, and I went down to the bathroom and flushed everything down the toilet, and I hit my knees and started praying.
Right then and there.
And kind of like a faucet was turned on. Everything that I put in me started pouring out of me. And I got up and I went down the hall and I woke my mom back up. And I said, "Hey, Mom," I said, "there truly is a God." And I started to tell her what was happening.
Yeah.
And she stopped me. She said, "Son, you don't have to tell me anymore." She said, "I was afraid." Said, "When I went in that room," she said, "I looked at you." She said, "I was afraid to leave you." She said, "But I look at you now." She said, "You're not the same person I saw." And I started.
And that was just moments ago.
Just moments ago.
Wow.
And in that moment was the first time that I ever heard the voice of God speak to me. In the midst of my darkness, in the midst of my sin, he reached in there and he came and he saved me in that moment.
You couldn't have been much lower.
No, couldn't have been much lower. And in that is where I started understanding that he truly does love us.
Wow.
And that was the first time I encountered that love.
And you physically changed.
Physically changed.
Man, how powerful. So that just opens the door for us because your life has gone through a lot of changes, and also your heart has gone through a lot of changes. And that's where we're going to go here in just a second. This is Russ Owens. You are part of True Purpose Ministries here in town, helping people with opioid addiction, and that just scratches the surface. I'm so excited. Thank you for being here. We'll do more of that and dig deeper into the story in just a second. This is Dealing with Life. This show today brought to you by Malone Dentistry. This is, of course, a show about struggle. My question to you is, are you struggling with dental issues? When you're searching for a dentist, you want to find somebody you can trust. You want to find somebody who you're comfortable with and who can help you even if you're nervous. I personally go to Dr. Stephen Malone at Malone Dentistry. Family and restorative dentistry. I've been going to them for 20 years because I feel comfortable with them. I trust them. I understand that they know how to deal with whatever issue I might come up with in my mouth. They're right off of Kingston Pike on South Peters Road. You can go to KnoxvilleSmiles.com and see some glowing reviews that'll make you feel more comfortable about talking to them. They treat you like a member of their own family. Dr. Stephen Malone has pursued extensive continuing education, well above and beyond what is simply required for licensing. You'll feel comfortable with him. He is just what the doctor ordered. so to speak. Malone Dentistry, family and restorative dentistry, KnoxvilleSmiles.com. Go see him. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker. We'll deal with more in just a minute.
No shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me.
Cause you're not afraid of all the things I feel. Don't have to hide the scars that still aren't healed. You want my tears, every messy word, every scar and everything. You want all I have, with no holding back when in my broken cry.
You're listening to Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith, a book about life, about faith, trust, and especially worry through the perspective of a dog. One Dog's Faith, available through Amazon, through Cokesbury.com, also locally at Farragut Pharmacy, Village Exchange, and also Cedar Springs Bookstore. In the studio with me today, by the way, this show brought to you by Malone Dentistry, Russ Owens of True Purpose Ministries. That is a program that is helping people all over our area through drug addiction, through life problems, through all kinds of things that have one single answer: hope. So we in the first segment we talked about you being in South Carolina and you found Jesus in the midst of a serious drug issue, but it didn't stop there.
No, Tom, no, it didn't. And you know, I like to say he found me in the midst of my addiction.
Yeah.
And
that's true. But I mean, he was always there, but sometimes he has to knock on our heads.
Yeah, or in my case, ring a cell phone.
Well, okay, and that worked.
Yeah,
it worked.
Even in the midst of that encounter, and after that, I ended up going back to drugs and alcohol and that life of addiction.
Yeah, sometimes there's still things in our heads. So why? And
the reason I believe that happened is because I still had a void inside of me. I still had unforgiveness inside of me from what happened to my dad and the guy that killed my dad. And so in that, I still wanted revenge. I still wanted an eye for an eye. And so
that's hard to let go of.
Very hard.
Good grief, yeah.
What we have learned and what we believe at True Purpose is that drugs is just a fruit of the root.
Okay.
And by saying that, in my unforgiveness was my root issue that needed to be dealt with, which still produced drugs and alcohol.
Yeah. Well, that's something that you can't necessarily imagine is going to go away.
Right. You want it to go away.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of effort and a process to go through for it to.
Yeah. I mean, you can have an encounter with Jesus and you can feel forgiveness for yourself, but that's not the whole picture.
No, not at all. So as that continued to go on in my life, I still was just a wreck. Ended up having another encounter where in my life he used someone to speak to me, and she was actually telling me her story about her mom raising her in church.
Okay.
And as she was telling me this process and telling me her story, she said, you know, my mom told me one day that I was going to have to make a choice. And she said, I believe I made the wrong choice. And when she said that to me, the Holy Spirit spoke to me. He said, it's time for you to make a choice. And in that moment was on a Saturday. I was supposed to be in Knoxville, Tennessee on that Friday to come into a program where I met my spiritual father and actually the founder of True Purpose Ministries, Jeremy Graham. Okay. And so when she said that, I took off running out of the hotel. Without going into detail, you can probably put it together yourself.
She's a woman that is part of the oldest profession, I'm imagining.
Yes,
Okay.
she was.
Okay.
And so in that, I run out of the hotel. I left her standing there, and I called home, and I said, okay, I'm on my way home. I'm ready to go. And fought tooth and nail all the way up to Tennessee, and ended up getting to New Hope Church, where I met Pastor Jeremy in 2007.
Okay.
And from that is where my life starts drastically changing.
All right, so talk about the process of forgiveness. Because this person killed your father. It was a random burglary, but, I mean, it was a brutal killing, and they couldn't even find him for 17 days.
Right. And so through that process, I was in the program, which was about a year-long program at the time, and they had a teaching going on dealing with forgiveness, and the teaching is by John Bevere, and it's called The Bait of Satan. And
the bait of Satan.
Yes.
Okay.
And in that teaching, it was absolutely life-changing for me, because as John dealt with a whole lot of different issues in his life with unforgiveness, as I was watching this teaching, I could see my life through the video. And I said, Lord, if you'll do it for him, you'll do it for me.
Yeah.
And so John Bevere went on this process of praying for another pastor that he was so offended with. And through that process that he started praying for the man, and one day it broke in his heart. And
It didn't happen overnight.
No, it
Okay.
didn't happen overnight.
Okay.
And so in that process, I said, Lord, you do it for him, you do it for me. So I incorporated his process and made it my process.
Okay.
And I started praying for the man that killed my dad.
And that wasn't easy.
No, not at all. Some days I could barely say his name,
Sure.
and that was the best I could get out.
Yeah, because you and your dad were close.
We were.
Yeah.
And as I continued through that process, there were some days where I started praying for him, and I could say, Lord, I pray that you bless him today. I pray that you keep him covered today. And that was about all I could say.
And he's in prison.
Yes, he's in
Okay.
prison. And so I got to a point where one day I started praying for him. And I said, Lord, I pray for him today. And I call his name. And I say, Lord, I pray for Thomas today. I pray, Lord, that you forgive him and that you don't hold him accountable for what he did. Lord, I pray one day that we would be used side by side for your kingdom and your glory, that we would lead people out of what we were in to get freedom for you. And in that prayer, as I started praying that prayer for him, I felt it start moving in my heart.
There's strength in that kind of prayer.
Yeah, and I started weeping, and I started crying, and I genuinely had compassion at that moment for the man that killed my dad. And I just wept and cried for him over and over and over for him to be free.
Goodness.
And at that moment, I knew that I had truly forgiven him. I knew without a shadow of a doubt.
Now, do you feel at that point, do you remember, I mean, did hate and anger really subside?
Instantly, at that moment, was gone. And through that process, I remember I was walking back and forth. I'm a pacer. Sometimes when I
Okay.
speak and preach, I pace.
Okay.
And a good friend of mine, Jose, he says that if he ever watches me or whenever I'm speaking, he has to go home and get his wife to give him a neck massage because he's
He turned side to side.
Yes.
Okay.
But I was praying, pacing, and I looked over at the table where I was at, and there was a set of keys on the table, and I reached over to grab the keys, and there were no keys. And I didn't understand at the time, but the Lord took me back and showed me that forgiveness is a key to the kingdom.
Oh, my.
And keys is a place of authority because it unlocks and locks doors.
It's your choice, yeah.
Yeah. And so forgiveness is a key of authority in the kingdom of heaven, is what the Lord taught me through that. And
so what happened then?
And so from that moment on, I was completely set free of any unforgiveness toward Thomas.
Okay.
And that carried on, and my life was drastically changed from that moment. After that root issue was gone and dealt with, I have not relapsed, went back to drugs and alcohol from that moment.
How about that?
And I believe
so that was the power that drugs had over you, or the whole process had over you. Once you've forgiven the root hate that you had, then life really changed.
Life changed drastically. And in that process, after that was done, we had an opportunity. This is probably 7 years or 9 years later, after I went through that, was his first time when he was eligible for parole.
Okay.
And so when he was eligible for parole, they sent us a letter and asked us to come up and speak on my father's behalf, and which we did. And
you and
my mom, my sister.
Okay,
and my
the whole
sister's
family
husband.
went up
yes,
there.
Yes,
Okay.
we did.
Okay.
And I remember it like it was yesterday, and through his hearing for parole hearing, and as he had the opportunity to speak first, which he was very. There was no remorse in his speaking. There was no care at all, and so it was so dramatic that the lady facilitating the hearing, she stopped him from talking.
Yeah, that's so productive for a parole hearing.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so she stopped him.
She stopped him. And so it was time for his family to speak. And nobody wanted to speak. They just sat there quietly, didn't want to say anything. And so she then looked at us and she said, okay, does any of you want to speak? And so they asked me to speak first. And so I did. And I kind of went ahead and told my family what I thought I was going to say, just to prepare them.
Yeah.
And as I started talking, I said, I want you to know I understand what it's like to be in prison, because I was in prison for 11 years because of the hatred that I had and unforgiveness I had towards you for what you did to my dad. I said, but I want you to know in 2007, I fervently started praying for you. And I want you to know today that I do not hold you accountable for what you did, that I have forgiven you, and that in that moment, you could feel the atmosphere of the room change.
The whole room.
The whole room changed.
Wow.
Some of the courtroom workers, they started crying. His family started crying. He started crying. I was crying.
It changed everything.
It changed everything. And it was a beautiful picture of Matthew 18, of the unforgiving servant.
Yeah.
And, it says that there was a servant who owed the king a debt. And the king, it was a debt that he couldn't afford to pay. There's no way he could pay it. But the king forgave him of his debt. And so as he was forgiven of his debt, he then goes out and he finds another one that owes him a small debt.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't forgive him. Matter of fact, he threw him in prison. And so as that happened, word got back to the king, and he pulled him back in front of the king. And he said, hey, I hear this to what you've done. And he said, it's not good. I'm using the Russ Owens version.
Yeah, right.
And he said, it's not good. And he said, because you chose not to forgive, and I'm going to hand you over to the tormentor. And so here was a man that was in prison because a man wouldn't forgive him of his debt.
Right.
And then here was a man who was getting thrown in prison and handed over to the tormentor because he wouldn't forgive a man that owed him a debt.
Yeah.
And
what
so,
a picture that is.
Yeah. And so two people are in prison in torment. And so that was my life, and that was Thomas's life, because I held him in unforgiveness.
Sure. And you actually were in prison.
100%.
Yeah.
Because it's beautiful, but also it helps us see, because of our choices of not forgiving an individual, our punishment by our own choice is we're tormented, in which I was for 11 years.
Yeah.
Because of
Yeah,
unforgiveness.
and you fell to drugs, you fell to anger, and you fell to hate, and and you could not move forward with your life.
Could not.
Unbelievable. We're going to find out in a minute what you've done with all that, and I'll give it away a little bit. It's called True Purpose Ministries, and I can't wait to see all the people that you guys are helping, and talk about where it's going from even here. Russ Owens. Good grief, what a story. And just showing the power of Jesus. It's just amazing. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker. This show today brought to you by Malone Dentistry. When you got something going on in your mouth, that instantly creates worry. Worry is something that I certainly try to avoid as much as possible. And what you worry about is, one, what's wrong, and two, who can I find that I trust that can deal with it? I personally go to Dr. Stephen Malone at Malone Dentistry. They know exactly how to deal with people like me, people who worry, are a little bit nervous. They know how to deal with cowards like me. They treat me like a member of their own family. You can't ask for any more than that. Honesty, experience, personal care. That's Malone Dentistry. They're right off Kingston Pike on South Peters Road. They have 2 new dentists there, not only Dr. Stephen Malone, but also Dr. Aaron Noble and Dr. Michael Costa Jr., all, along with their team of 15, are very caring, very personable, and very compassionate people. KnoxvilleSmiles.com is where you can go to check out some of the glowing reviews. Malone Dentistry. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, and we'll have more with Russ Owens and True Purpose Ministries in just a moment.
When you're at the end of the road and it's not the one that you would have chosen. When you're at the end of your rope and you're holding on but feel like you're falling, you will see he still does miracles, 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 miracles. You will see he still does miracles.
You're listening to Dealing with Life, and we're doing just that today. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. Today's show brought to you by Malone Dentistry. And in the studio with me today is Russ Owens, who is part of True Purpose Ministries, a very powerful program helping people deal with addiction, helping people get recentered. And man, thank you for what you do. So we left you a second ago. Your father was killed tragically in a robbery, a random robbery, and you ended up years later, after harboring a ton of anger and turning to drugs yourself, meeting him in his parole hearing and telling him that you forgave him.
Yes.
So, and that was transforming. Tell me what happened in that room.
Well, Tom, after I told him I forgave him and went in through what the Lord just laid on my heart, the atmosphere of the courtroom started changing.
Yeah.
And everyone started crying in the courtroom. He was crying. The court workers were crying. His family was crying. It was pretty.
Just changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Life.
He started out not even being remorseful
at all. Yes. And at the end, the judge, I guess, asked him if he had anything else to say, and he did. He said, "Yes, I do." And at that moment, he turned and he started to address us. He said, "I want you to know I am truly sorry." And he was starting to cry. He said, "If I could go back in time, I would never do this."
Wow.
And I want you to know that I truly am sorry for hurting your family and causing this on to your family.
So this feeling of forgiveness that you didn't get it instantly, but through Christ, through His forgiveness of you, and beating on your head through the years, you finally understood what forgiveness was, and it changed so many things.
Yes, not just my life. It helped change my family's life. It helped change Thomas's life, and it helped change a lot of other people's life, and it still helps change people's lives.
He's still in jail, but that's an impact on
Yes.
him. So now, what do you do with that?
Well, I take the testimony that I have through the goodness of God, the testimony of Jesus Christ. I take my testimony, and now I use it to help bring other individuals who have gone through life-altering
situations, problems, struggles.
Yes.
Insert problem here.
Yes. And so I use that to help bring them out.
Okay.
And that is with True Purpose Ministries.
So it's when somebody's going through an issue and they're struggling with opioid addiction or addiction in general, it's easy for somebody to say, "Yeah, man, I feel you."
Yeah.
But when you tell them your testimony and the journey that you went through, and you found Christ, and you found forgiveness, and you found healing, and you found freedom from drugs, it opens their eyes.
It does, because you not only have somebody now that has crossed the river. But they went through the battle. They went through the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, they had to swim.
Yep. And so here they are now, standing successful on the other side.
All right. So you are part of True Purpose Ministries now. You worked at Carm for a while. Let's go there for just a second. You worked at Carm for a while.
I did. As I had met with Pastor Jeremy over at New Hope Church, and he was running the program and started that program there with him and his dad. When he started transitioning to start True Purpose Ministries, Jeremy Graham, he is the founder and of True Purpose Ministries, and I'm kind of just a fruit of his tree.
Sure.
And he's my spiritual father and mentor, and a lot of other things to me in my life.
He's helped you. He's allowed you to help others.
Yes, 100%. And so now where we are at True Purpose Ministries, when he started that process, I transitioned as well, and was transitioning at Carm at the time, and which is another great stepping stone in my life.
Yeah.
And that's where the Lord brought my beautiful wife, and where I'm now been married for 6 years, starting our 7th year. In June will be our
awesome
7th year. We have 3 beautiful children.
Look at you.
And Lord's really blessed.
Who would have thought 10 years ago, if that's, or 15 years ago, if that's where life would be with you now?
Yeah, no one.
Yeah.
No one, not even myself.
So now you worked at Carm for a little bit. You met your wife, but now True Purpose Ministry gets on its feet, and you're part of that now. Tell about what you do and what True Purpose Ministries really is.
What I do for True Purpose Ministries is we have 4 different locations. Our main office is in Maryville.
Okay.
We have a campus in Knoxville. We have a campus in Sweetwater and a campus in Warsaw, Indiana. And I'm the director of the Knoxville campus.
Nice.
And
where is that?
We are at 1928 Fairmont Boulevard.
Okay.
We partner with New Life Ministries. They have been a great blessing to us. They allow us to use some office space to do counseling and teachings and things just to help the guys. And so they've been a great asset as well in this journey.
Where do you people come to you? Tell us about that process.
We get referrals by word of mouth. Some are court appointed. Some people just hear stories and they say, I want to change my life. Not every individual that comes to True Purpose Ministries deal with drugs or alcohol. Some of them just want to further their relationship with Jesus.
Okay.
Some of them just want a job skill, and because we also do job training. We help with construction, landscaping, culinary. We have.
You allow people to work.
Yes, sir. We do training.
And get a new purpose in their lives.
Exactly, because we want, as an individual graduates with True Purpose, we not only we take a holistic approach.
Okay.
And so we take a spirit, soul, and body approach into bringing the wholeness to an individual.
Wow.
We bring the spirituality through Jesus Christ and a relationship through Him, and we also deal with the counseling. We partner with UT, College of Social Work. They bring interns in and help counsel our guys and help gets them acclimated back into society with going to school. We have 3 individuals that have applied for college. One's in Pellissippi, one's in Johnson University. We have one that's also applying for Johnson University now.
Goodness.
Another student who is in the process of going to TCAT, and so we are really meeting individuals where they are, just like Jesus does, but He refuses to leave them where they are, just like we do. And we want to bring them up to a higher place and a higher standard of living. And so we do that through discipline. We do that through accountability. We do that through spirituality. We do that through job training. And we just bring a whole different aspect to the table.
That's serious. That's so needed. And people through whatever problem can find themselves really deep in trouble. And you just don't know where to turn.
Yes.
So you have a place in Maryville now in Blount County that is housing people who are struggling with opioid addiction. Talk about that.
Yes. So I guess what I could say is, how God called Moses up onto the mountain, and He gave him a pattern. He said, okay, this is what I'll show you in heaven, and I want to give you a pattern of what to do down here on earth. And He gave him the tabernacle of Moses, and something that we teach. And so that's what happened with True Purpose Ministries. God gave Pastor Jeremy a pattern. And so with that pattern, in Maryville. It is now a 28-day clinical program, which is Christian-based. It's the first state-licensed Christian-based 28-day recognized in Tennessee.
Oh, that's great.
And so we have the 28-day program where an individual, after coming through the program, they have the option of furthering their recovery or furthering their life with coming into the year-long program from there. And so it just doesn't stop at 28 days unless an individual thinks that's what they need.
Sure.
And so with that pattern, we take it and we go to the other counties. Pastor Jeremy and Gil Hansen are starting what they call the Tennessee Opioid Initiative. And with that, they are targeting the top 16 counties of Tennessee that have the highest rate of opioid addiction.
Yeah.
And they're taking the pattern that they have in Maryville and copying it to the other counties because it's proven to work.
So it's working.
Yes,
it's
sir.
Really working.
Just had an opening of the Danes House, which is a graduation house. And so now there are 4 houses in Maryville, along with the office and the counseling center there as well. And it is a great success.
So a graduation house is where somebody gets through the program, but they need a place to live and
Yes.
and to start their life over.
Right. Some want more accountability. And so there's a process there of holding them accountable a little bit longer, helping them with finances, helping them with how to budget, the whole 9 yards.
The whole life way to start over and live.
Yes, because some guys have nowhere to go, but some do, but yet they don't know how to transition successfully.
Sure.
And so we like to walk alongside of them, even in that transition, and we take a slow process with it.
Wow, you are active in helping people transform their lives through Christ. That's so amazing. In just a minute, we're going to talk about how people can help you or how people who are struggling can turn to you. Russ Owens through True Purpose Ministries in Knoxville. What a powerful and amazing thing you guys are doing. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker. Today's show brought to you by Malone Dentistry. We'll have more with Russ Owens.
I surrender. Here I am, God, arms wide open. Here I am, pouring out my life, gracefully broken. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Yeah.
You're listening to Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker, author of One Dog's Faith. We've had in the studio today Russ Owens, who is with True Purpose Ministries. And Russ, although we've heard your story and we've heard a lot about what it is, redefine real quickly what True Purpose Ministry is.
What True Purpose Ministries is a 12 to 18-month discipleship program in Knoxville.
Okay.
And we meet guys where they are. We bring them in and disciple them. We focus on finding root issues, and we deal with identity and helping guys understand who they truly are.
So you deal with people who have been struggling with drug addiction, but not all.
Right. Not all have struggled with addiction. Some just are in a life crisis and have nowhere to go, not knowing what to do with their life. And so we bring them in and help them get some direction in life.
Yeah.
And we set them on a course, hopefully leading to success and to Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and finding the true answer. In your case, you found forgiveness
Yes.
through Jesus, which changed your life and your dependency on drugs and everything else, and you share your testimony with them. But what's I think is interesting, you have told me that you even have a ministry direction for some people.
We do. After an individual graduates the program, if they decide that they want to go further and they feel like they're called to ministry, then what we do is we'll bring them into a school of ministry and we'll start training them up into whatever office they think maybe the Lord's called them into.
Yeah.
And we'll start teaching them and training them. If it's teaching, if it's preaching, if it's evangelism, whatever they feel like the Lord's called them to, we'll raise them up in that.
Yeah.
And after that year of school of ministry, if they feel they want to be ordained, then we set them aside for a year and train them up a little further. And then after that year is up, then we go into the process of ordaining ministry.
Awesome. How about that? So if somebody was struggling with life, dealing with life, as the name of this show is, whether they just they have turned so many different directions and found no answers, or if they're really struggling with a drug problem, how would they get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of us by several different ways. You can call our office, which is 865-247-8066. That is our office in Knoxville.
Okay.
And then also you can email us at truepurpose@newlifeknox.com.
Okay.
And you can go to our Facebook page, which is True Purpose Knoxville, and you can get a hold of us that way as well.
And if somebody wanted to help you, I'm sure those numbers would be pertinent as well. It's
Yes.
called True Purpose Ministries. I have a question for you that I want to find out. If you today could go back to the Russ Owens who was struggling with drug addiction, struggling with anger, unforgiveness, what would you tell yourself? If you could go back and say, put your hand on your own shoulder, what would you say to that guy?
There's hope. There's hope. Because that guy had no hope. He didn't even see a future.
Yeah.
I can even relate to part of your story as we were talking. I would sit on my porch, and I had a dog. His name was Buster. He was a Boykin Spaniel. And I had him on a runner. And I would watch him, and he would run, and he loved to run. And I would watch him on that runner, and sometimes he would get out further than the runner would let him, and it would snatch him back.
Sure.
And as I would watch him do that over and over again, I realized that was my life and where it was. I was really wanted to be free of drugs and alcohol, really wanted to be free of the misery, but I felt that there was absolutely no hope, because every time I felt like I was starting to get free, it would snatch me back.
Oh, what a picture.
And from that, I didn't think there was hope, and I just wept and cried. But today, anybody that is listening or would hear this story, I want to tell you there's hope. There's destiny still inside of you. And, just as the word says, that the gifts and callings are without repentance. And so he still today chooses us. That's Jesus. He still chooses us today. He's not caught off guard because of the situation you're in. He's not scratching his head wondering, what am I going to do now? They're not doing what I placed inside of them. He still has the destiny. He still has the gifts and the callings inside of you, and he is still calling you.
Wow. It's like a parent watching their kid learn to walk. The parent is not rooting for the kid to fall. They chuckle when the kid falls, but they go and pick them up.
Yes.
And say, try again.
Yes.
There's hope. You're going to walk.
Yes.
And the kid may, not that they're thinking too far into the future, but they're thinking, I'll never get this. But the parent, as we can view Jesus, picks us up and roots you on and say, you can do this.
Yes.
How powerful. Russ Owens with True Purpose Ministries. Reach out to him if you feel you need help, and also reach out to him if you feel you can help. It's a nonprofit, and it's helping hundreds and hundreds of people in our area, as well as Blount County and Sweetwater,
Yes.
and Indiana.
Yes.
I mean, and it's just growing like crazy. And God bless you guys for being willing to be God's tools. This is Dealing with Life. I'm Tom Baker. We'll deal with more next week.
You speak